Hmm, a letter? I have a bad feeling about this. What could it be?
Dear Doctor, we hope this letter finds you well. In case you don't know who we are yet, it is we, the Nintendo Ninjas. While we enjoy calling you and hearing your lovely voice, we feel that this is a matter that should be treated privately. Your next task is of the utmost importance, given that you'll be making a very informative video, one that will take you to the depths of your psyche. It is October, the month of all spooky and scary things, so we felt appropriate to make a little research into your phobias. However, we realized you have already made a video about your worst phobia, so we had to dig a little deeper into your files and found an interesting thing, your second biggest fear. So this month's task will be talking about...
Oh no. H- Hello, dear patients. Your favorite doctor here, Dr. Plague. And today I come to talk to you about a very delicate and terrifying matter. It is October after all, right? Somehow, the Nintendo Ninjas have discovered my second phobia, and now I have to discuss it. And trust me, there are quite some experiences related to that specific phobia, although not as much as games and situations related to spiders. I've been very open with my arachnophobia, but this one? Not a lot of people know that I also suffer from. Alright, let's just go ahead and discuss some situations in gaming that take you to the depths of the ocean, the vast nothingness, the abyssal unknown. Let's talk about thalassophobia. First of all, let's define what thalassophobia is. Thalassophobia is defined as an intense fear of large and or deep bodies of water, such as the ocean, seas, and lakes. This is not to be confused with aquaphobia, which refers to a fear of water in general. As most phobias, thalassophobia is likely to be developed from early childhood traumatic experiences, such as being thrown into a deep body of water without supervision or being near to drowning. But as with my arachnophobia, I have never experienced any traumatic event related to deep waters. Hell, I've only been in a beach once in my entire life. However, there is also a more ancient feel to this condition. According to research, only around 5% of the ocean has been fully explored, while the 95% remains unknown and mysterious. Who knows what can lurk in the depths of the ocean? What type of monstrous and gigantic creatures can exist without our knowledge, luckily for us, confined to their own abyssal habitats. As with all type of fears, games are great at exploiting people's fears, and thalassophobia is no exception. Given that it's such a specific phobia, there aren't quite as many examples as with other popular phobias like arachnophobia or nyctophobia. However, we'll get in a metaphorical submarine and explore the murky depths of thalassophobia-related experiences in various games and the different levels of horror experienced. Can't I just go back to talking about spiders again, please? Let's start with something a little bit tame, like dipping our toes in the water. Echo the Dolphin is a nice cute little game for the Sega Genesis that focuses on Echo, a little dolphin going on an adventure after all his sea friends get kidnapped. At first you don't see anything wrong with the levels, given that they don't go very far from the surface, but as you progress, everything gets deeper and darker and more disturbing creatures start appearing. You know what they say, the creatures found deep into the ocean have an alien-like presence, and the creators of this game took that way too seriously with the enemy designs being literal aliens. Even if the game is not very realistic, it's an early taste of how video games could exploit this fear of deep waters. Moving on onto some more recent territory, we have BioShock 2. Both the first and the second game take place in Rapture, an underwater city, but the first game doesn't let you explore the outside of the city. Well, the second game does. They are not very long or difficult sections, given that you have infinite air and no enemies appear while outside the city. However, the atmosphere, loneliness, and vastness of the ocean floor can be quite unnerving. Now, if we're talking about exploring the deep abyss, this game has you covered. Terraria has seen a resurgence in later years thanks to its amazing Calamity mod, which adds new enemies, bosses, and biomes. One of these new biomes is the Sulphur Sea, which hides in its depths the Abyss, an area that is not suitable for the faint of heart. This place is very dark, full of dangerous sea creatures like giant squids, reaper sharks, and the dreaded Eidolon worm. Add to this the fact that this area eliminates most underwater breathing methods, instead allowing you to remain a bit longer underwater before eventually drowning. Well, gee, thanks. Nothing better than an abyssal grave full of horrible monstrosities. Even with its cutesy and simple art style, this area can inflict dread in the heart of thalassophobes due to its pressing atmosphere and unrelenting darkness. Let's talk about a very beloved game with a very specific section, Grim Fandango. Don't get me wrong, I love Double Fine games' quirky style, but this game's puzzle design is fucking horrendous and obtuse. If you beat this game without a guide, you're an absolute madman. Never mind. In the third chapter of the game, you end up in the bottom of the ocean, where you find a little robot named Chepito. In one particularly disturbing scene, Manny asks about sea monsters, to which Chepito answers by showing you the monsters lurking in the dark. I'm no expert, but that can totally give you a heart attack. As it's normal with these game's puzzles, you have to get a hold of Chepito in order to safely traverse the depths of the ocean. Not a very pleasant sight overall. Of course, this wouldn't be a Dr. Plague video without bringing out some obscure hidden gem for generations past, and this time it's turned for 40 Wings to shine. This is a 3D platformer that takes place in two little kids' nightmares, and, of course, there are some ocean-related levels. Most of them are tame enough, but Krusty Rusty Wreck has a specific section that can chill you to your very bones. At one point, you have to swim outside the sunken ship to enter through another side, and what you find there is terrifying. The emptiness and nothingness of the ocean in its splendor, with dark sections and limits where you can't go and can't see beyond. The best course of action is just swim as fast as you can inside the sunken ship again, or else who knows what might appear lurking from the dark. This proves once again that the game doesn't have to be realistic to impart fear in the hearts of a specific phobia holders. Furthermore, let's embark on an adventure with our favorite furry crew in Star Fox 64. There's an aquatic planet called Aquas. Even though you're traversing the environment in your ship, your field of vision is very limited, leaving most of the level in complete and unexplored darkness. You can also encounter a wide variety of marine life forms, such as fish, starfish, and electrified jellyfish, all of them with uncanny appearances. And at the end of the level, you encounter a giant mutated clam with an eyeball in the middle of its mouth, because the level itself wasn't terrifying enough. Of course, according to your level of thalassophobia, your level of anxiety while playing these sections may vary. You might even find terrifying other levels in relatively shallower and more illuminated waters, like Donkey Kong Country or Crash Bandicoot 3 water levels, or other less natural ones, like Sonic the Hedgehog Labyrinth Zone. However, this phobia itself has a very specific variant, called Megalo Hydro Thalassophobia, which is centered on the creatures or other objects that might be found in deep water. Abyssal underwater creatures have a tendency to grow to insane sizes, a lot bigger than their shallow sea counterparts, the giant and colossal squids, the green land shark, and giant isopods and spider crabs. Why do spiders chase me everywhere I go? And even though these creatures don't represent a danger to humans in regular habitats, given the extreme conditions they need to survive, there's still that lurking danger. Imagining that one of these creatures is lurking underneath our boats, waiting for the right moment to attack, or thinking about the other gargantuan creatures living in the unexplored space of the ocean. Nevertheless, games are also extremely good at taking advantage of the fear that these giants inflict, so let's take a look at some examples. There are some times when these creatures are used cleverly as a barrier to prevent players from going too far away from the game's boundaries, as is the case for Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy and Ratchet & Clank 2016, where a giant fish engulfs you whole if you try to swim out of bounds. And this is dialed up to 11 in Jak 3, where a giant tentacle comes up from the water and drags you down to the depths, probably to eat you too. We can't forget to mention the giant eel Unagi in Super Mario 64, located in the Dire Docks level. As Mario starts descending in the lake, you can see the creature start swimming around with its terrifying spiky teeth and dead eyes. When compared to Mario, this thing is absolutely gigantic and could surely swallow the player in a single bite if it wanted to. The fact that you have to actively chase it to get a star surely accelerated some hearts back in the day. But not all these creatures are used as mere environmental hazards or enemies. The meat of the matter is found when they are used as bosses, and boy, do we have some in stock. As it couldn't be any other way, we're starting with a double feature of Zelda games. First, one of the darkest and most disturbing Zelda games, Majora's Mask. In the Great Bay Temple, you face Georg, a gigantic monstrous fish with, you guessed it, a giant eyeball in its mouth, because Zelda. The first phase is simple enough. Shoot him with some arrows until he stops and the eyeball pops out from his mouth, then shoot some arrows at it. But then, the fucker crumbles the platform where you stand and it turns into an aquatic battle. There's nowhere to run, you're now in his domain. In this phase, you have to actively chase him down to make him swallow some spiked balls until you eventually defeat him. The underwater part is tense, but it can't compare to what comes next. Now let's talk about one of the darkest and most disturbing Zelda games, Twilight Princess. On Lake Bed Temple lurks Morphle, a giant eel-fish hybrid with tentacles that swims around the arena. You have to chase it and get on its back to stab the eyes on it until it crashes on the wall and accidentally empties the chamber out of water and fucking dies. Once the water has been drained from the room, you can truly feel the air coming back to your lungs for sure. Next, we have an unique addition of underwater combat to a well-known game series, and I'm of course talking about Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter 3 to be more exact. This entry in the franchise added some underwater monsters and underwater combat, contrary to the rest of the series where you can only fight on monsters on land. First in the list we have Gobul, a monstrous mix of anglerfish, stingray and pufferfish that dwells in the lakes. As with real anglerfish, it can lure its prey with its lantern and can also hide in the sand and attack out of nowhere. Fortunately, the underwater areas where you fight this monster are not too deep, so the most unsettling part is its horrific appearance. This monster can also go on to land sometimes, so you might get lucky by fighting it on your turf. Then we have the Lagriacus, a sea wyvern who is also the flagship monster of the game. As it is a bigger monster than Gobul, you fight in a wider, more sea-like area, but it can also come out to fight you on land. There's also the Royal Ludroth, a water lion-like beast that can be fought in lakes or on land, but it doesn't really look like an underwater creature. But then we have Cadius, a massive elder dragon that you can only fight underwater, and due to its size, the areas where you fight are deep, dark and terrifying. The design of the creature itself it's not that horrifying, but its sheer size is enough to trigger a scare. I mean, this thing can swallow you whole by barely opening its mouth. We go from one colossal monster to another, setting our sights in a faraway and dreary land. That's right, we are talking about the classic that is Shadow of the Colossus. The Colossus number 7, Hydrus, is a giant eel-like creature that has electrified spikes on its back. You fight this monster in a huge body of water, but you can actually dive in the water. You have to wait until the creature surfaces beneath you to climb onto its back and start making your way through it, stabbing the electrical spikes until you get to its head and finish the job. The boss will eventually submerge, trying to shake you off, and you get a glimpse of the dark abyss that awaits beneath you. If you run out of air, you'll have to let go of your grip to resurface and then look for another opportunity to climb onto the Colossus's back. When you finally defeat it, the creature sinks to the depths and you swim back to land. Even though the creature is gigantic, as with all colossi in this game, it's passive and never looks to swallow you whole. Maybe this is one giant sea monster that should have been left alone. Leaving the melancholy aside, let's return to a brighter environment and somehow a more terrifying creature in BanjoKazooie, Lord Wu Fak Fak. You fight this thing in Davy Jones's locker. A cramped and dark place, and once again we find ourselves fighting an anglerfish. I'd be surprised that they're so prevalent as underwater monsters, but look at these things. They are absolutely frightening. Anyway, you have to shoot some boils on its body until it dies, but he's constantly chasing you around, looking to eat you, and as is common with these types of kid-friendly games, the design of this boss is very scary, with a huge mouth and big sharp teeth. Add that to the darkness in the arena and you're up for an experience that I'm sure discouraged a lot of kids from finishing this game back in the day. But wait, not all battles must be underwater in order to trigger feelings of unease, so let's talk about Resident Evil 4. Yes, it's that one creature, the very first boss of the game, the Lago. You find this monster while trying to cross a lake in a boat, and man, this opening scene is the literal definition of Megalo Hydro Thalassophobia, with the shadow of the monster swimming under your boat. The Lago is a gigantic mutated fish that pushes your boat around while eventually coming out from the water and rushing at you with its mouth open, Las Plagas coming out from it in the form of disturbing tentacles while you shoot harpoons at it. This boss is more of a spectacle than anything else, given that it's not particularly hard to put down, but the design combined with the implicit consequences of losing the battle is more than enough to be terrifying. Oh, and of course, that's the little event that can be triggered by shooting the lake before the battle. Come on, dude, chill. So far we have faced oceanic abysses, emptiness, vastness, and horrible mutated creatures, and I do believe these are excellent examples of how video games can trigger thalassophobia. However, nothing compares to the terrifying experience that is Subnautica.